What's up, everyone? Welcome to the King's Dominion podcast, the official podcast of Dominion Church and Dominion Institute. I'm Josh Wyatt, usually here with my wife, Pastor Hope Wyatt, but actually we did a couple episodes with our worship pastor, and you've probably already seen those, and we did Kingdom Parenting Part 1 and Part 2, and so we're just going to continue on that, but not with our worship pastor, Pastor Jess. We're going to bring on some special guests, my parents actually, Joshua and Amy Wyatt. They also serve at our church, and they also have served me for 25 years. So we're so thankful that they're on, going to continue talking about kingdom parenting. We're glad that both of y'all are here.
Thank you so much.
Yep, they're excited to be here and probably super, super nervous. So it's okay. It's just the three of us and a producer guy, and he's super cool, but we're here. Talking about kingdom parenting, we thought it would be really cool because when we were here with Pastor Jess the last time, it occurred to us that I've got, my wife and I, 4 kids under 3. And actually, this is, unless you got a text, live updates, Asher is 6.4 pounds, so he gained weight. And his sodium's back up to 136.
Okay, so it's normal. So that is a miracle.
We're doing good. We're doing good. Praise the Lord. And I just got that text just now. But I have 4 kids under 3, so I'm in the newborn toddler stage of parenting. Not to say that I'm not a good parent. I'd like to think I'm pretty decent, but I'm in the newborn toddler stage. And we talked to Jess a couple weeks ago and did 2 episodes with her, but she's still in the 12-year-old and 16-year-old stage, which you guys still have with Ava, and we'll talk about that. But we were talking to Jess afterwards, and we were like, man, it'd be really cool to get somebody's perspective of parenting adult children. And then I was like, well, I just don't know anybody that parents adult children. Like, I don't know anybody that would hop on a podcast and talk about parenting adult children. And then Hope was like, you're parents. You're an adult. And they're great at parenting you as an adult. And so we were like, I wonder if they do it. I don't think I asked. I think I just said we were going to do it. And here we are. So that perspective is something that's so needed because you're a parent. Once you have children, you're a parent until you die. You're a parent the rest of your life, but those parenting abilities, what you do as a parent and the way you approach parenting, it changes. You parent a 16-year-old very differently than you parent a 2-year-old, and you parent a 25-year-old much differently than you parent a 16-year-old. So I'm just going to start with a couple scriptures everybody knows about parenting. Ephesians 6:4, everybody knows, says, parents, don't provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. NLT says the discipline and instruction. Hope and I were talking about that scripture where it says nurture and admonition, and I said that so beautifully describes the gender roles in parenting. Mama's nurture and dad's admonition. Admonition means instruction, training, discipline. And then, of course, we all know Proverbs 22:6, which says train up a child in the way they should go. When they're old, like me, with a bald spot, they won't depart from it. And that's the dream. That's the goal, that you train up a child. And I looked up the definition of that word train means to direct, to teach, to instill skill. And then I liked this definition, and we can kind of talk about it, to prepare for a job. And the job, you think on-the-job training, you get hired for a new job, you start the new job with training. And so to prepare a human for a job, the job is life. By the time they're 18, you got to know that they're going to leave and be prepared for life, and that's the task you have from 0 to 18. So speak to that for a second. We've got scripture, just kind of talk on that. I've got some thoughts, but we're kind of whatever comes up as far as preparing a kid for life, and then I guess knowing when they're prepared, knowing when they're ready.
Well, I don't know that you there's a given time to stop, like hey, at 18, you're prepared for life, because parenting adults means that, you're constantly... The road that they're traveling down, hopefully you've already been down, and so you know the potholes and the curves and the turns and the dangers. So even at, 45 with a 25-year-old, I'm like, okay, I know the direction. I've been down this road before. I know where there's going to be black ice, potholes, treacherous conditions, so you still do that. And I feel like even with my mom and dad who are, approaching or 70, it's going to be the same situation. They, say, hey, this is what we're seeing. Even though the times change and the structure of the way things were back then, where they were not dealing with, internet and social media and stuff like that. And even when we were younger, we didn't have as much as that to deal with. There's still core values and lessons that are taught about, danger is danger where it comes on a phone or a screen, an iPad, Facebook, anything like that. Danger is still danger. So you want to be able to show danger or temptations or things that are going to cause stumbling blocks and everything like that. And necessarily, you want to have them ready by 18, but your job doesn't stop. It never stops.
Right.
I'll just say parenting young children is definitely easier than parenting grown children.
Right.
The young ones, you can just tell what to do. The old one, as they get older, they want to, hey, let me try it this way. Well, and you have, and with younger kids, you want them to experience everything. I remember, hey, not dangerous situations, walk up and down the stairs or something like that. I want to hold your hand and everything like that. No, I want to do it by myself. And then they fall down. And you're like, well, I kind of felt like this was going to happen. You were going to fall down the stairs, but you needed to learn a lesson. It is the same thing when you get into older kids as well. You're like, look, I don't think this is going to be a good idea. No, I want to do it anyway. I'm going to take the training wheels off. I'm going to let you do this, but, just know that I'm going to be here. I don't think this is a good idea. And it goes into, adults as well, when you're dealing with that stuff like that. Hey, don't do this. And when those situations, and I know he's been through it a few times, it could be as simple as, hey, I want to buy this car. I don't know if you should buy this car. Maybe we should look at something else right now. No, I think I want to do this right now. Okay. So, there's different things that happen like that. Somebody, I want to buy this house, or I want to move here. I want to rent that, or, and you're like, I've been there. Maybe you shouldn't do that exactly right now. But it's just
a different level of support.
Right.
They still need you extremely, but they also are figuring things out on their own. If my son doesn't text me or call me 10 times a day, then I want to know what is wrong with him.
Right. Well, and one of the biggest, which I don't even know that y'all realize you taught, but one of the biggest lessons I know is that it's okay not to know. And I won't go into too many details because this will be public, but in 2012, our family had a challenge because you were mayor for 4 years, and there was an opponent who was not as Christian as he should have been, and they spread awful season. They spread awful and untrue rumors about our family for a period of time. And so growing up, they were saying things about our family that I'm like, we're in church every night of the week. Like, y'all don't know us. They're pastors. We're Christians. They're pastors. And I was going to school and hearing about all these things that my parents were doing. And I'm like, where did you hear that? And it came back from this political opponent in our small town. And the night of election night, I was always raised thinking, well, good stuff happens to good. You reap what you sow. Good stuff happens to good people, and bad stuff will happen to bad people. Not karma, but the Bible says you reap what you sow. And he actually won. And they were celebrating, and we were crying and didn't understand it. I'm 12 years old, and I looked at, and I don't even know if you remember this, I looked at my mom crying and said, why are good things happening to very bad people? Because they were bad people. Why are good things happening? And here's a parenting tip. She said, I don't know. You don't always have to know. And that provides another layer of vulnerability, and I trust you more because you don't come up with some random answer. You're okay saying, I have no clue. I have no clue why that happened. I'm not even going to try to make something up. I have no clue. And that is equally, now I have no shame. It killed my pride to be able to say, I don't know. Now I've got people, even in pastoring, that'll come ask me questions, and I'm like, have no clue. I'm not going to make up an answer. And so pastoring's a lot like parenting. I learned a lot about how to pastor by watching my parents parent. So just the skill of being able to not come up with random answers, but be able to be humble enough and say, I don't know that answer. Because I think parents feel pressured to always have the right answers. Right. And we don't. And the sooner that we realize we don't and get real vulnerable with our kids and like, baby, I don't know. I don't know why that happened. I just know that God is still good and that He's still got us in His hand, and eventually it's all going to work out. So I know that was a sensitive moment, but you can speak to just that principle of, man, we don't always have to have the answers. We just always have to be present.
I'm a contractor by trade, and I remember when we were doing work, there would be times, especially when I was a smaller business, handyman almost. It was just a couple of us that were working, and we had a real estate agent that would call us for everything that she would get a house ready for the market. She would ask us, hey, can y'all do this? Can you do that? Can you lay tile? Can you, paint? Can you do all these things? And we didn't know how to do most of that because it was a specialty trade. She didn't want to spend the money on specialty trade, so she would ask us if we could do it. It was me and my dad and another guy that worked with us. And we would say, yeah, no, not a problem, we'll do it. Back then, this is how old we were, you could go into the home improvement stores and you could buy a book, little do-it-yourself,
Because YouTube wasn't a thing.
yeah, little tile work for dummies. And one of the guys that worked with us would go home and read that book over the weekend and come back and say, I know what we need to do. And so it's not that, if we'd have said no, we'd have lost out on that job. We'd have lost out on that income. We'd have lost out on, having supplies and funds for our families and stuff like that. So it's not, I hate to use this mantra because it sounds so, fake, but it really is fake it till you make it. Put yourself out there, strive to do it, learn what you can. It goes into the, especially in the biblical principles, you have to have the biblical principles, the guidebooks like we were doing in order to become better at what you are. This is a life lesson for your whole life in every aspect of your life, from parenting to living your life personally to everything. It's the instruction manual for your life. And so, you can say, well, I don't know that yet, but give me a minute.
Willing to grow.
Let me go to a church. Let me go to a conference. Let me speak to my pastor. Let me read the Bible. Let me find out what it needs to do. Let me watch a podcast. Let me see what I need to be at, and then give me a second, and I'll be ready. And I will grow, and I'll expand my territory to where I need to be at. So, I like that part of it, and like I said, it kind of goes back to the parenting aspect of it. Is that yes. You may not have the answers and everything all the time, but give me a second.
Right.
I will. You're not going to be rudderless. Speaking for the child's sake, you're not going to be rudderless. You're not going to be leaderless. Just I've got it figured out. A lot of times I will say, in situations from marital to parenting, I'll figure it out. Give me a second. Give me a day. I'll have it figured out. And, Amy can, my wife can attest to this. I'll say, just give me a minute. I'll get it figured out. If you just give me a minute, and then it'll be perfectly fine.
I'll just say, pertaining to that situation that he was talking about all those years ago, in the moment, I didn't know. But, because we didn't respond in the same way that they were responding, we sowed seeds. And, you reap what you sow. And just because you planted a seed back then, it may not immediately come up. Those flowers grow over time. And even now in our lives, I see the good from the seeds we planted back then. I see, because we did not retaliate or say things, I see God showing out in seeds that we planted a long time ago.
Right. Right. Well, and the skill to be able to say, I don't know, let me figure out. I don't know, let's give it some time. I don't know, let me pray about it. I mean, there's a guy in our church, and he's got 2 kids, and he recently told me, it's Adrian, and he recently told me, so you'll know when you hear this, Adrian. He recently told me that he sat down, he got frustrated with his daughter, who I won't name because she's a kid. It's not, she doesn't want to be on a podcast, but with his daughter. And finally he said, baby, you think we've got it all figured out? We're growing. We just got saved 2 or 3 years ago. You're learning how to be a Christian kid. We're learning how to be Christian parents. So give us some grace. I'll be a better daddy in a year. You'll be a better kid in a year. But all this thinking that we're perfect and that we always know what we're doing, we're trying to figure it out too. We're just trying, and that's what kids don't recognize about their parents. And what I didn't recognize was that, again, not to speak too much to y'all's story because we've got 12 minutes to open that can of worms. We're not going to do it. But I was unaware, thinking that my dad could fix everything and my mom was perfect, that my parents were teen parents. They were figuring out how to parent when I was figuring out how to live. And that was something that I just didn't realize until later in life, that even, and won't out her either, but in conversations with my older sister about our childhood, I'm like, look, they were figuring it out. Like, you got to give some grace. They were like our age, younger than us when they were having kids. So the humility to go, I don't know, I'm not there yet, but I'll figure it out for you. We'll figure it out together. Give me a second. I'll talk to my pastor. I will talk to a leader. I will pray about it. I will get in the Word, and see kind of where we go with that. And the growth, because some people think, well, when you're 18, you're done growing. I mean, I'm still growing. And the growth to be able to say, I tell the church I'll be a better pastor in 5 years. Give me 5 years, I'll be a better pastor. And I can tell Trey and Sam and Arthur and Asher, give me 5 years, I'll be a better parent. Tell Hope, give me 5 years, I'll be a better husband. Because I'm going to keep getting better constantly. Give me a few years, I'll be a better son. And so being willing to not go, well, I'm the parent, I said so, and I know what I'm doing, and I got it. But being humble, even as a parent, to go, I'm growing, don't have all the answers yet. I will figure out the answers for you, either from the word or from prayer, and then we'll figure it out together and we'll grow.
One of the things that, as the scripture says, be like a tree planted by the living waters. And most people don't realize how deep that is. But a tree, from the time it starts growing, never stops growing. From an acorn, an oak tree will grow and grow and grow until it dies. I mean, that's what it is. And that's the way we have to be in our life, is that we're constantly... I have a clique of friends that I hang out with, and I tell them I'll give them a little fun fact or something, like, why do you do that? It's like, because you need to learn something. You need to grow every day. If you're not learning something, especially in today's world where technology and information is in your hand on your phone constantly, not stupid cat videos on TikTok or something like that, but something that is actually going to, you need to learn, and from a parenting standpoint, not to get into the, the social media type, the high drama stuff, but you need to be aware of what's going on. So, I've recently downloaded TikTok. I mean, I'm talking about within the last 2 or 3 months, just, and I don't watch a lot of it or anything like that, but I need to know what it is, so that if my daughter, our youngest one, Ava Grace, asks, hey, I need to have some kind of semblance or something. So I'm growing again. Okay. I raised his sister, which is 27, him, which is 25. And then our surprise, which is, 11 going on 12.
Just a disclaimer, we actually, God has a sense of humor, and we actually found out we were expecting a baby when our children were 15 and 13.
Yeah. So we bought a car for the 15-year-old and a car seat for us. So, but I mean, I'm going through that again. I'm growing again, because I have to learn different things now than when I had these two, him and his older sister. And so it's a completely different game. Yes, I still have to, and I know there's other people out there, so it's not unique here. I'm raising with adult kids, one of them that has kids, so, grandparent, and still doing dance and ballet and horse riding with the 11, 12-year-old and stuff like that. So we're kind of split between the two. Plus, we're also helping with the grandkids. So, we've got different levels that we're constantly hitting and stuff like that. So you never really stop growing.
Well, and that's a principle. One thing you said about the trees is that tree will keep growing until it dies. So in that, we see a principle. The minute you stop growing, you're dead. Mm-hmm. So anything that's not growing is dead. And so I'm going to keep growing as a pastor. I'm going to keep growing as a husband. I'm going to keep growing as a man. Okay, we have a men's mentorship group in our church, and I'm like, the minute that you stop growing as a man, well, I'm a good man. Okay, but you can be a great man. Okay, you should always be growing. I'm going to keep growing as a husband, as a parent. And so even you may be listening to the Kingdom Parenting episode of this podcast, and you're like, but I'm a good parent. I don't need to click on that. Okay, but we could always improve. We could always grow. And this is, there's a meme, and it's corny, but there's a meme that I even quote when I'm teaching on spiritual growth and change, because you can't grow without changing, of this caterpillar looking at a butterfly, and he's like, you've changed. And the butterfly's like, we're supposed to. This was the plan the whole time, was for us to change. And again, even in conversations with my older sister, it's jokingly, we're joking, but she'll say, they're different, talking about our parents, right? They're different with Ava. They're just different parents to Ava, my younger sister, than they were to us. And I'm like, yeah, they're supposed to be. 20 years difference, time has changed, they have changed. I would sure hope that you parent differently in your 40s than you do in your 20s.
We're a whole lot different with those 4 grandbabies.
Absolutely. I mean, but you're supposed to. You're supposed to grow and change and develop. Anything that's not growing is dead. And so you should always be pursuing growth. You should always be growing in every area of your life. If you have a skill, if you have a trade, then you should be growing in that trade. I am obsessive about reading. And right now I'm reading a lot of leadership books because I'm in a leadership position, and I'm obsessive about any topic. Like, I'll eat it up. I will actually add it to my Amazon list and wait for it to show up at my door because my mom can see my Amazon list.
Which is parenting grown children.
Yes, and so I just add it to my Amazon list, and it just magically shows up. All of these books, and Hope's like, my wife, she's like, are you going to read? I'm like, absolutely. And I read, on average, people at the church think it's insane, I read 3 books a month. 3 books a month at one time. I'm reading 3 books at one time. I'll read one chapter of this one, get it done, open another chapter every night. I read out of 3 books at a time, not counting the Bible. I'm constantly growing. I want to be a better pastor, a better husband, a better man, a better leader. I want to be a better parent, everything, which again is also the heart of this podcast, to help people to grow, because that's a key principle that he said it and passed it and just didn't realize how impactful it is. If you're not growing, you're dead. Mm-hmm. It really, in every area of your life. And I would even say this, now we'll talk more about parenting maybe even in the next episode, but I would even say this: you can be growing in one area and stagnant in another. Growing in your marriage but stagnant in your parenting. Or growing at work, which is where a lot of divorces happen, because the work is getting the best job of you, the best part of you. You're growing at work, you're becoming a better employee or employer or businessman or whatever, and you're growing so much at your 9 to 5 that you get home and you're not improving at all at home.
Going back to the little tree analogy, the thing about it is you can tell a tree that has not put the time in and ran its roots down deep, but just went with the fluff and spread its branches out. Because the storm comes in, it's the one that lays over, because it's got all of this fluff and dander out there, all of this, look at me, look at me, look at my branches, look at my greenery. And then when the wind comes, that gets caught up and that gets laid over. And it's got a small root base. But those trees that have, took their time and had the water, the living water on them, and they run them roots down deep, when the storms come in, they may lose a branch. They may get their leaves blowed off, but next spring, they'll have new branches and they'll have new leaves. So like he was talking about, you can grow and be stagnant in one area. You just have to make sure that the way you're growing is the right way. All of the show is not the grow.
Right.
The grow is how deep you go.
Right. I just want to say, you have to allow your grown children to grow too, though. Right. They still need you, but it's in a different way. My son is married, and he is married to a wonderful woman. She takes care of him very well. That's not my place anymore to take care of him like that. And I've always told them, I won't ask you every day, do you need something? I won't ask you every day, are you okay? So when you need me, you'll have to reach out to me, because that's how they learn and grow together. No longer is he just our son. He is her husband, and she takes care of him in the way that I don't have to anymore.
Right. Well, and even with the plant analogy, a plant can't grow if it's suffocated. If you've got it in such a small pot and you're always hovering over it, a plant can't grow. Now, when you have a toddler, keep them in the pot. I mean, they're in the pot. That's your job. They're in the Petri dish, and then they're in the pot, and then, you've got to cultivate that, speak to it, feed it, water it, do things like that. There should come a point where your relationship, it's still your plant, okay, because you're still the parent. But your relationship moves from I've got you in this pot to I'm gonna plant you in the ground. And then I'll come and I'll water you, and I'll come and I'll visit with you, and I'll come and I'll prune you, and that's fine. But then I'm going to leave because you're in the ground. You're independent now, and you're doing your own thing. Nothing can grow if it's suffocated. And this is where a lot of parents with adult children end up straining their relationship with adult children, is they suffocate that relationship or get involved in that marriage or get involved in their parenting style. And that's something that will absolutely hinder growth. And so that's a good point, is, we've talking about making sure that as parents we're growing, but then as parents of adult children, there comes a point you back up and let the children grow. Like you've fed them through the years, you've watered them through the years. At some point, and I'll say this in kind of a closing point, you've got to learn to trust yourself. Trust that everything that you said and did, because you'll continue to have a voice in their lives, but ultimately everything you said and did during the time that they lived in your house, trust that it was good enough that they're good.
Well, and I'll say real quickly, one of the hardest things that we did, but one of the best things we did was drove to Oklahoma and left them.
Right.
My husband and I got back in the vehicle in tears as we drove off and left these two young adults in Oklahoma. But it was the best thing that we did for them as well, because they become one there, and it was just the two of them and no one else's opinion to weigh in.
Right. Well, and we may even have to talk about that too on the next episode, because I would even say, now I've always loved my parents because they've always been good parents, okay? They were never bad parents. But I would even say that experience, them moving us to Oklahoma and those 2 to 3 years that we were away, was when we got closer than we ever were to my parents. I mean, we came home much closer to my parents than we were before we moved to Oklahoma, and there were things associated with that season that really brought us all closer, and it helped us all to grow as parents, as children, as adults, as people, which is the goal. The goal is growth, and ultimately that's the reason you're listening to this podcast, because you want to grow. That's my prayer for you, is that you grow as a person, a man, a woman, a Christian, a believer, a minister, a leader, a husband, wife, parent, whatever it is that you're called to do for the kingdom of God. It's the King's Dominion podcast, that you grow, take dominion in every area of your life, especially even in the home. Because it's a shame if you take dominion at your workplace or in your ministry, but you fail to take dominion in the home. And that's the goal, that we grow and be who God's called us to be. So we're praying for you. We love you, and we'll see you next week on Kingdom Parenting, I guess part 4 now.